Hi everybody and welcome back to lecture. In today's lecture section, what we're going to do is take a few minutes and we're going to focus on something that I keep referring to a little bit on and off throughout the semester, the idea of post-baccalaureate education. So really in a nutshell, what we're going to be talking about today is both grad school and law school. And both of those are very beneficial to your education and beneficial to you career-wise, especially if you're looking to advance in specific agencies or organizations. But they're really big time commitments and they're really big economical commitments as well. Grad school and law school both cost more than your undergraduate educations will. Sorry if you keep seeing my hands. My dog is here and he wanted attention, so he's sitting on my lap while I record today. And so we're talking about things in a time, education, and economic sense today in terms of commitments. And they often take longer to complete, especially if you're working full-time as well. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the pros and cons of each avenue. And I just want you guys to be aware of some of the realities surrounding it so that you just don't get yourself into something and come out with a massive amount of debt and then you're like, no, I didn't really like this anyway. So, because that has been known to happen. I know some people who have gone to law school and grad school and they just absolutely hated it, but were so far in that they decided to finish. So anyway, back to my point. What I want to do is start with law school because that is sort of the one that criminal justice students tend to gravitate towards a little bit more than graduate school. And I mean, law school, you guys probably are already pretty familiar with it. The idea that you're going to study law and you end up getting your Juris Doctorate or your JD, and then you go out into the world and you begin to practice law. But a Juris Doctorate is not the same thing as a doctoral degree, even though they both share the name of doctorate in there. You're not going to be called doctor at the end of law school. In attending law school, what you're going to do is sort of get this general legal education at first and then sort of segue into a more specialized track. And at the beginning, when we're talking about the general education in law school, we're talking about things like criminal law, civil law, contract, tort law, environmental law, some business law, and some other areas that then focus yourself in this more specialized track later on. If you are attending law school full-time, and meaning you're not working, the only thing you're doing is attending law school, generally it takes about 3 years to complete if you're on track and you're going at the speed that the law school advocates for. It could take obviously a lot longer if you are attending part-time. Once you graduate, you have the degree, you have the JD, the Juris Doctorate degree, but you're not legally allowed to practice law in the United States until you pass the bar exam. And the bar is tailored to individual state law. So, meaning that if you wanted to practice law in Texas, you'd have to take the Texas bar exam. There are only a handful of states that practice the idea of bar reciprocity. And what bar reciprocity means is that if you pass the bar in Texas, will allow you to practice law in Indiana, like wherever, right? But it really only is extending to a handful of states. So if you're in Texas and you want to move to California, you would then have to take the California bar and study all over again and learn all sorts of California law in order to be prepared for that bar exam. So really you're sort of starting over from scratch. So most people attend law school in the state that they want to practice in. So if you want to practice in Texas, I would recommend applying and going to Texas-based law schools because they'll teach you all of the things that you'll need to know to pass the bar. If you then decide to move, you're going to have to start over and you're going to have to learn about contract law, constitutional law, criminal procedural law, federal rules of evidence. What else is there? There's property and tort law, I think is the last one for the bar exam in whatever state that you move to. So it's a time-consuming process, and if you decide you're going to up and move or that you want to be able to practice law in a different state, you got to start over again. So most people will attend school in the state that they want to practice in just for ease of knowledge sake, I guess. Then but that really only is applying to the state level. And we obviously know that a lot of criminal and civil cases still take place at the federal level. So if you then want to practice federally, and we're talking criminal here, if you want to practice criminally at the federal level, this means that you're either trying or defending defendants in the district court, which is the trial court level, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, or, you know, dream of all dreams, the United States Supreme Court. You eventually have to take the federal bar equivalent to the state bar. So what you need to do is like states, you have to take the bar exam and subsequent examinations for each individual district. So if you wanted to practice law here in Tyler at the federal level, you would have to take the bar equivalent for the Eastern District of Texas, so that you would learn the local, state, and federal laws of Texas, and you could be able to defend that client. If you then took on a client in the Northern District of Texas, you would have to pass their bar equivalent to show that you can practice law in that area. So it's a much more complicated process once you get to the federal level. So state is a little bit easier, and it provides you a blanket ability to practice law anywhere in the state at the state level. Okay, so once you're barred, and not in a bad way, meaning once you pass the bar, then there's often more nuanced certifications that can take place within very specific areas of law. So you have to take these certification tests in order to say that you are a board certified attorney in this area, right? Let's say that you're a board certified personal injury attorney, or whatever it may be, right? If you can call yourself a board certified attorney, it means that you've gone on and you've taken this much more educational courses and things that focus on this general specific area of law. You've been practicing this specific area of law for X number of years, and now you can call yourself a board certified attorney because you've passed all of the certification tests. Once you get to that point, let me tell you something. You are making bank. A board certified attorney, it's a hard process to go through, and if you can do it, you're making some good money. There's only a handful of certified board attorneys for specific things here and there. So if you can call yourself one of the only board certified attorneys in X in a specific area, you can write your check pretty much. But it takes a while, and it's a difficult process to get there, and you still have to get through law school. So let's not get too far down the rabbit hole, and let's get back more to the idea of law school, because that's what you guys got to go through first before you can actually start to practice law. So as you're probably aware, like with undergraduate programs, there's various types of law schools in terms of size, in terms of location, and in terms of the quality of education, that you'll be receiving there. And law schools work on what we call the tier system. Grad schools are a little bit different, and they're based on research classifications, but law schools are based on the tier system. Tier 1 schools are the big daddies, right? These are traditionally what we consider the top 50 law schools in the country. These are our top-notch schools. They're the hardest to get into. They're often the most competitive, but they're also the ones that everybody wants to attend. And they're traditionally associated with very large schools. They're the most difficult schools to get into, but they're also the highest quality education that you are going to receive. So these are the ones that have the sort of cutthroat classes where everybody's stepping on one another to get ahead. They're the ones who everybody wants to get an internship with this specific law agency, and people will just sort of step right over you in order to get any sort of advantage over you. It's a very competitive process. But these are the schools like your Harvards, Yales, Dukes, UPenn, Stanford's another one, Columbia, Berkeley's a tier 1. I don't think I said Cornell yet. These are all tier 1 schools. Baylor's, more locally, we would have Baylor, UT Austin, Texas A&M. These are all tier 1s. Florida State, University of Florida, University of Georgia, all of those big schools are all Tier 1 law schools. And then after Tier 1, you get to your Tier 2 schools, and these are the schools that are ranked 51 through 100. Tier 3 schools are the ones that are ranked 101 to 150, and Tier 4 schools are everything else that are ranked 151 and lower. So at the end of the day, no matter where you go to, you get to call yourself lawyer. And as long as you get through law school and you pass the bar, that is what matters. You can practice law. However, as I say that, it's a little more complicated than that in terms of employment. So if all you want to do is become a defense attorney, or if all you want to do is become a prosecutor and you're eventually going to work your way into that system, then where you attend school is probably not as important comparably to if you want to go to some of these massive major firms. If you want to become a defense attorney for some of the best defense firms in the country, then your schooling means a little bit more. And if you want to go into corporate law and you want to work for some of these massive businesses, your schooling means a little bit more, meaning where you attended school means a little bit more. So there was this famous story a handful of years ago, and I can't even remember at this point where I saw it at, but it was one of those things that made its rounds through the academic circles, and it was a job advertisement for a new lawyer who was somewhat fresh out of law school, and the story was for Shell Oil, so obviously a massive giant company here, and the job advertisement that they focused had very specific requirements, and it was something to the effect that anybody from a Tier 1 through 4 law school could apply, but the lower you went down, the higher you had to be in terms of your graduation rank. So if you attended a Tier 1 school, you had to be somewhere like in the top 50. And if you went to a Tier 4 school, so meaning the less higher ranked, you had to be somewhere in like the top 5% of your class to graduate. So it was very, very nuanced, and you had to prove your graduation, like where you were in the pack when you graduated, for them to even look at you and take your application. So for some companies, it's just a very, very, like they care a lot more than other law firms, or they care a lot more than the federal government might in terms of where you got your schooling at. Excuse me, because the assumption would be if you are a Tier 1 attorney, if you're an attorney who came out of a Tier 1 school rather, you have the better quality education, and you're going to be able to understand the legalese more, and you're going to be able to find the loopholes that Shell Oil is looking for compared to somebody who's a Tier 4 graduate. So in this case, it's not enough to just have the degree and then sort of go from there. In this case, and there have been plenty others where corporations are looking for that status, for that branding, if you want to go that route into business law, then you're probably going to have to put yourself in a greater amount of debt to do so, to go to that Tier 1 school. And when we're talking about debt, Tier 1 law schools, that's where the debt is coming from. So if you got a Tier 1 education, specifically at some of the Ivy League schools like Harvard and Yale, you're talking about like $250K at a minimum for tuition, cost of living, books, all of that stuff for 3 years. It's not a cheap road to go to. But then if you are getting a job at Shell, you're probably getting paid millions of dollars, and that education is, pretty much nothing, that debt. But one of the things to keep in mind is that law schools very, very, very rarely offer scholarships. Most of the time, people are forking out the money out of their own pockets. And when I say rare, we're talking like maybe 1 or 2 scholarships a year to a Tier 1 school. The rest of them are paying out of pocket. And if you are going to a Harvard, you are going to a Yale, that's a lot of money out of pocket that you're willing to take on debt-wise in order to try and secure this job. So when we're talking about a realistic job prospect, the guy who's being hired by Shell probably isn't 3 months out of law school. We're probably talking about somebody who has a little bit of job experience under their belt before they go work for this massive corporation. And One of the other things that you need to consider, especially when you're taking into account the type of law that you might want to practice, is that criminal law, and I say this with, please take this with a grain of salt because I'm not trying to knock anybody's dream here. And I talk to so many students who want to go become a prosecutor and they want to lock everyone up and put all the bad guys away. But criminal law is a very, very tough avenue to pursue. If everybody wants to be the prosecutor, there are very limited job opportunities out there, and most people have to settle for fresh out of law school. I either have to sell my soul to one of these massive firms, I have to become a public defender, or I have to become somebody's legal clerk for a while until I can find the job opening that I'm looking for. So while I don't want to discourage anybody from pursuing this pathway, by all means you should do whatever your heart wants you to do. And if you want to go study criminal law, do it, right? I'll even, write you a recommendation letter if you're a good enough student to get into one of these giant schools, right? But the jobs criminal law-wise, are sort of few and very far between, especially federally. You don't know how many students I've talked to who want to go the federal route, whether it's through the prosecutor's office, through the district attorney's office, or they want to become a marshal, or they want to go FBI, or they want to do whatever they want to do for the federal government. It is so hard to get into the federal government because once people get in, they're staying. And they're only leaving because they're being forced out by age, by retirement, something to that effect. But once you get a federal job, it's very rare that somebody is willing to give that up to go find something else. So you have to sort of get the lower rung jobs while you're trying to climb that ladder. So if you go the defense route and you go the public defender route, you're working way long hours, you have way too many clients, you're not being paid enough, you're not getting the resources that you need, and here you are sitting on $250,000 worth of debt because you decided that you were going to go this route, right? So I just want people to be realistic about what you're getting yourself into, especially in a system where you're working with a lot of indigent offenders who don't have money for a private attorney and they have to go the public defender route. This system is full, and I don't want this then to become a whole sermon on the idea of public defenders and the system being broken. But this legal system is full of defendants who have just a state-appointed attorney. That attorney spends 5-10 minutes with the defendant, helps them to work out a plea deal, and then moves on to the next person because that's all the time, money, and resources that they have to devote to that specific client. And it's not the public defender's fault, it's the system's fault at work. But this is the system that a lot of law school graduates come out of and they walk into, and they don't end up staying in that position too long because they got a lot of debt to work off. So they gravitate towards the private firms, and it's just a very stressful job to work as a public defender rather. So it's time to go into private practice, find a job at your firm. Maybe you have some friends or some colleagues that you want to start your own firm with, but either way, there's just a lot more money in private practice than there is in the public sphere. So if you stay somewhere long enough, obviously you have the potential to make partner within that law firm, but you really have to show all the other partners that you are worthy of it. So again, we're talking long hours. You have to make some sort of substantial contribution or breakthrough, and when everybody at that firm wants to make partner, it's very difficult to get time in the courtroom, right? Especially at some of these bigger firms. Some new attorneys might not ever set foot in a courtroom to actually practice law, and what they find is that they turn into the gophers, right? They're almost like law clerks for these attorneys. I might spend a lot of time researching the case, looking up case precedent, gathering evidence, finding witnesses, potentially interviewing those witnesses or working on depositions for the head attorney on the case. Really any sort of prep work that the lead attorney needs done, the young new attorneys will do. So it's a lot of gopher work at first while you're trying to build up your reputation and trying to establish yourself within a private firm that I am worthy of being here. I can make a strong contribution to this, but everybody else is trying to do the exact same thing, right? So it often takes time, hard work, long hours to make that sort of impression where you can be considered a candidate for a partner, right? So again, all of this stuff is not meant for anybody to be discouraged, right? These are the realities of the job. And if you don't already realize what some of these realities are, then you are purposely trying to avoid the situation because you think it's going to be great, right? But studying law is fulfilling and it needs to be done, and we need attorneys, right? But I just want you guys that if this is something you want to do, make sure that you are finding the right avenue of law for you, because again, these employment opportunities are not like what they are portrayed as on TV, and I just want you guys to go into the situation with your eyes wide open and having some sort of idea of what the realities are. Okay, so not only can you use your Juris Doctorate to become an attorney, but you could potentially become a judge later on. And many judges do have history as attorneys, but it's not a requirement. Judges do go to judge school, so they'll learn all of the different things that they need to learn before they become a judge. But normally, judges do have criminal law or civil law experience, one of the two. So not only is criminal law is obviously one way to go, but there's a lot of different opportunities if you're doing it to try and make the money and have a good career. And realistically, if you go into some of these less practiced areas of law, there's a lot more money to be made. So we're always going to need divorce attorneys. Corporate attorneys and environmental attorneys are all three areas of law in which the attorneys are making just generally a hell of a lot more money than the criminal attorneys, because really, unless you're Johnny Cochran, right, it's going to take some time, and you have an uphill battle in criminal law. So if you're wanting to become an attorney for the money, don't go in the criminal law route. Go in the other areas that I talked about, because that's where the money's at. It's not in criminal law at all. So, okay, so when we're talking about law school, right, you're going to school for one very specific thing. I'm going to get a Juris Doctorate because I want to become an attorney in some capacity. But if you're looking for something that is going to help you with a more wide variety of career opportunities, then grad school is really where you want to go. So some schools only offer master's programs. Some schools offers master's programs and doctoral programs. And it really just depends on what you want. If you just want a master's degree because you think that that is going to be something that helps to springboard you in terms of advancement for your career, you could go to a smaller school that is technically, I guess, less expensive than some of the bigger places to get that master's to springboard. If you want to use your graduate degree to springboard into an academic career, then I would encourage you to go to a school that has a master's and a PhD program. Schools with terminal master's programs like UT Tyler, like we have, really only all they offer is the master's degree, and then you would have to go somewhere else to get that PhD. So if you plan on getting the full PhD, you should just go straight to a full PhD program, because you can get the master's degree first and then immediately begin on the PhD program without having to reapply. And that's a real beneficial strength for somebody who wants to go all the way through and do it pretty quickly. So you can do it at different schools. You can get the master's programs or master's degree somewhere and then go somewhere else for the PhD, but it is not required. You don't have to do that. I know that there has been, at least within the circles that I'm in, there's talk about wanting more diversity in terms of the programs that you study at, but it really is not necessary. If you just want to go to a full PhD program, you can do so and be just as successful as somebody who goes to a couple different schools. So in terms of the master's program here at UT Tyler, as I said, we are a terminal master's program, so the only thing you can get is a master's degree in criminal justice here. And the program that we have here is strictly criminal justice. Other programs, like the one that I went to, offer a criminology degree, and it's a little bit different, and I'm going to explain to you in a little bit why they're different. So my bachelor's, master's, and my PhD degrees are all in criminology. Dr. Bailey and Dr. Helfers have criminal justice-based PhDs. So the difference between these two is that the program that I attended was very theory heavy, and we focused more predominantly on the reasons why people commit crime and the behavioral aspects of crime itself. In a criminal justice program like we have here, we focus more on the CJ system as a whole and just a little bit on the behavioral aspects of it. So if you remember, and at this point, hopefully all of you have taken the criminology class, it's the theory class. It's the explanation of why people commit crime based on this theory. My program at the University of Florida was pretty much the entire class, just expanded over many different theoretical aspects. So I focused on critical theories, I focused on the application of theory, general theory. My research methods class were very theory based, very theory heavy, because that was the type of program that I was at. So it just depends on what you're looking for. And if you go to a program like I did at the University of Florida, I never took a policing course. It wasn't required. I never took an administration course. I never took an ethics course. I never took anything like some of the things that we offer here, because it was just a very different program than a traditional criminal justice class. But what's really nice about graduate work in comparison to your undergraduate work or even law school is that graduate schools really let you study the things that are of interest to you. Obviously, you have to take the general core areas, but there's a lot more opportunity for electives, taking things that might be outside the discipline that you want to incorporate into your field of study. And then obviously graduate schools are a lot more research intensive. So basically you have carte blanche as to what you want to study. My master's and PhD programs in those two, my predominant research focus was on sexual offending and sexual deviancy. And I chose that aspect because that's what was of interest to me. But instead of the bar exam, what master's and PhD level programs have you do is take something called the comprehensive examinations, and then you either have to write a thesis or a dissertation depending on the track that you are in. So the comprehensive exams are sort of similar to the bar in that it tests you on everything that you need to know, but it's more of an abstract exam rather than the statutory types of questions that you would get asked in the bar exam. But either way, if you take the bar exam or you take the comprehensive exams within a graduate program, these exams suck. Oh, do they suck? But everybody has to go through it because it sort of evaluates you on competency. And what they do is they sort of teach you on all of the knowledge that you learned within that program. And many of them are timed. They often require you to write a substantial paper in a short amount of time, maybe 10 pages or so within a 6-hour chunk. It could be within a 24-hour period. Mine were 10, 12 pages, somewhere around there in a 6-hour chunk of time. But the ones that we do here at UT Tyler are over a 3-day weekend, but you get 3 questions in that 3-day period. But it really just depends on the program, but pretty much every program has the comprehensive exams. So you have to take them at some point if you go through a master's or a PhD program. And normally what these exams serve for is the last hurdle before you get that degree. So did you learn everything that we wanted you to learn? Can you apply it? And once that occurs, then you get your degree and you can graduate. The thesis and the dissertation options are, and this may sound kind of silly, but this is just because I love to research, they're the more fun option in my opinion, and very few people agree with me on that because they are such substantial projects. Sort of similar to the research project you do in this class, a thesis or a dissertation requires you to formulate a research project from scratch, go out and collect and analyze data, and then evaluate those findings and things, but just like on a massive scale. So our research project here, but on steroids. And if you're doing this type of project, you're producing a document that is at least a couple hundred pages long if you do it right and you do a good one. And then typically what you do is you orally defend your results in front of your thesis or your dissertation committee. But the upside to this is that you get to choose the topic, as I said. The comprehensive exams you have no control over, but with your thesis and your dissertation, you get to choose the topic and you get to study whatever you want. So as I said, I focused on sex offenders and the sex offender registry because that was what was of interest to me, and I had faculty members that would help then guide me through that dissertation process. And if you go to a large-scale PhD program like I did, or like Dr. Bailey did, or Dr. Helfers, the expectation is then that you become, sorry for this little tail, if you can see it, the expectation then becomes that you're going to segue into academia like we all did, become a faculty member at a school, and then start to raise the next generation of criminologists. But I keep talking about things in a more criminal justice or criminology program environment, but there are tons of different degree programs that you could put to use to help you in a criminal justice related arena. So public administration is a super fantastic one. Sociology, social work, psychology, political science. There's a ton of different arenas that you can go into at the graduate level that will help you, especially if you're using this graduate degree to help you in advancement in your career field. But the other thing, and we've talked about this, I sort of jumped this point earlier. When we were talking about law school, one of the things that we were talking about was debt. Sometimes, and again, it depends on the program, but there are more funding opportunities in graduate school, and normally those funding opportunities come in the form of a tuition waiver. So some of these larger programs, like the three of us went to, you often can get tuition waivers and small stipends to work for the university. So when I came out of graduate school, I didn't owe any money for the tuition, and I had some help with the cost of living and things like that, but you're not paying or you're not accruing the large amount of debt that you would in law school. And the reason for it is this: graduate schools are a lot more time intensive, but they're a lot more work on the individual level. So your incoming class in law school, depending on where you go, might be at least 100, 200 kids, right? Students. But at a graduate school, your incoming class might be 5 to 10 students. Because at the graduate school level, we like small class sizes. We like more one-on-one instruction because there's a lot more interpretation to the things that we do, whereas at law school, you're learning the legalese of all of it. So universities often can supply tuition waivers and small stipends to these students, which then in turn means a substantially less amount of debt. However, the caveat to that is what I'm talking about is larger PhD programs. Often terminal master's programs do not offer the same kind of funding that a PhD program has. So if going to graduate school is something that is of interest to you, I would recommend going the PhD route rather than just terminal master's route, because the expectation of funding might be there compared to some of these smaller schools, while you still can. Okay, so that's it. I just want to say thank you for your time, for your attention. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about what post-baccalaureate opportunities there are out there for you guys. I know this is sort of different from the other lectures that we have had this semester, and this is the one and only one that I'm going to talk about in terms of educational opportunities beyond your undergrad careers. So if you have any more questions about either the law school or the grad school route, come talk to me. I'm always happy to talk to students about what my experience was and the experience of some of my friends who have gone through grad school and the universities that we all ended up with, or working at rather. So if you have more questions, like come see me and we can chat about everything that you need to talk about. I'm full of good information for you guys, and your faculty members are always excellent resources when you're trying to learn about things that you haven't gone through, but that we have. So come talk to me. If you have any questions, let me know. And if not, then I will see you guys next time as we continue down the research lecture route. So have a good day, everybody, and I will see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.